My name is Bailey and welcome to the Dance Podcast. In this episode, I will be diving into the world of professional dance. I will talk about all things related to dance and careers. I will also be interviewing Mr. O'Brien to learn about his experience with working in the dance industry. So before we bring Mr. O'Brien on, I'm just going to talk about some things that I've learned about professional dancers through some research and through personal experience, and try to answer the question, what does it take to be a professional dancer, or a ballerina specifically? And the short answer is that it takes years and years of hard work, dedication, and time, and it just takes extreme mental and physical strength. If you've ever seen a ballet or like a dance or a show or anything, you might think to yourself, oh, that looks kind of easy, like what is the big deal? But I can tell you it is not anywhere near as easy as it looks. You have to have so much, everything has to be a specific way. You have to have the technique, you have to have the precision, and it just takes so much hard work and time and dedication to get to the point where you could even consider trying to make it in the dance industry or trying to make it as a career, just because of how much dedication and time and hard work and just every little thing has to be perfect. Whenever I tell people that I dance, they're like, oh, yeah, I used to dance when I was like 4 and then I quit. And that's like honestly the most common answer when I'm talking to people about being a dancer. That's the thing, is you just, as you get older, you lose people because it does take up so much time, and just because for some people it might be boring, especially at earlier stages. But me personally, I have plans to stick through with dance at least till I graduate, because it's like a part of me and I could have never imagined not really doing it. When I started dancing, we had so many girls in my class, and now there's like 12 of us total, and there was probably about that many in my grade when I first started. And now the entirety of 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, plus a couple college girls, makes up about 12. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Like, we've lost so many people along the way when they just decide, like, I can't do this anymore. It takes up too much time. I have other things I need to be committed to, or they just decide not to do it anymore, or they move away. And yeah, so you kind of figure out who's serious about it as you get older. And I mean, obviously, not everyone's goal is to become a professional dancer. That was never a goal for me. I mean, obviously, I would love to be a professional dancer, but it's just not a realistic goal for me. And honestly, the amount of people that end up dancing when they're in high school, and then the amount of those people that actually goes on the track to become a professional dancer is not very big. I have never really met anyone, at least at my studio, that's ever gone on to become a professional dancer, except maybe one. So I have done some research, and I just want to talk a little bit about what day-to-day life is as a professional dancer. So the first one, she dances with the Colorado Ballet, or used to, and what I learned about her is that when non-dancers would ask her how much time she dances or works, or how much she rehearses or does things like that, the answer is actually surprising to them, that she dances 4 to 9 hours a day, 5 to 7 days a week, and a typical day would differ depending on what's going on, what shows are going on, is there a show going on. Basically, a common theme throughout all of these people that I read about is they always start with a company class, or just a ballet technique class in the morning before they do any rehearsals. And this usually ranges from about an hour to 2 hours, usually about an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and 30 minutes. And you might think an hour to 2 hours is a long time to be having a ballet class for, but you would be wrong, because you have to cram so much into a class. There's so many different things that you need to keep up your technique for. And the classes that's what the classes are for. You can't just learn a move and then it'll be perfect forever. You have to continue to keep your technique and your strength and your flexibility up to the same level so that when you need to use that specific movement or jump or leap or turn, you have to be able to do it up to par and up to the level that is needed from you. And so these classes are pretty short actually for all the things that you would do in like a normal ballet class. Classes are usually followed by a break and then hours of rehearsal afterward, especially depending on if there's a show that people are prepping for or if it's just learning choreography. But the hours of rehearsal vary a lot. It all depends on what kind of a part you have, what kind of a show you're doing, what they're working on that day. And so you could have like a lot of hours of rehearsal, especially when you get closer to the performance and you're doing dress rehearsals and running the show over and over and over again. It can get insane, and that's coming from someone who does not do anywhere near the amount of shows and classes that these professional dancers are doing. And even me taking like a couple classes a week and doing 2 or 3 shows a year, it can get insane, especially close to performance time. And I can't imagine having to do so much rehearsal that these people do. Performances are a lot. I mean, personally, they're some of my favorite things to do. I've never had an issue with stage fright for dance. I've always been excited to do it. I love performances, and I just love kind of the camaraderie that's backstage and all the people, and you've worked so hard and you're showcasing your work to everyone who wants to see. And it's a really good feeling to do a show. I love it. It's one of my favorite things about dance is the fact that we get to share all of our hard work with the community. And that's why I think 171 is such a great place to be, because I'm not dancing competitively. Instead, I'm dancing more of a laid-back kind of dance studio, but at the same time, we still get to show off our work for the community. And personally, I think that doing a big, huge 2.5-hour show is more fulfilling for me. I just feel that it is a lot more fun for me because there's so much magic that goes into it. And for shows, we don't rehearse on the days of shows because you have to save your energy for the shows, and it makes no sense to run through the show when you're going to do it 2 more times in that day in front of people and an audience. It just doesn't make sense. But these professional dancers, they're running the show. They're doing 3 hours of rehearsal before they do a show, which is insane to me because I don't think I would be able to do that, because you want to be at your best for the show. But also, performances, like, there's a lot that can go wrong. Nervousness is okay, and it's good sometimes, but I feel like you have to have a mindset of it's not going to be perfect, because shows are never perfect, but you have to know in your mind, like, okay, it's not a big deal. Yes, I messed up. Yes, this thing happened, but I kept dancing, and chances are no one even noticed because the audience doesn't know the choreography. It's just you dancing, and even like if a prop doesn't work or something, the audience doesn't know. I mean, they could know, but you just have to have that mindset of just keep it dancing. It's not going to be perfect. It's never perfect. And honestly, a lot goes wrong. One time before I was in the Story Bellas, when I was really little, I actually remember watching this show. They did Lion King, and I think it was Simba, the guy who was Simba, his tail fell off in the middle of one of the dances. You might think that the first thing you'd want to do is put the tail back on, but actually the best thing you can possibly do is leave it there and keep dancing, and then next blackout someone will get it for you. That's what we were always taught, is like, if a costume piece comes off, just keep dancing. It doesn't matter. Like, that's, at the end of the day, that's not the most important thing. You just keep dancing. I touched on this a little bit in my last episode when I had Amaya come on and we were talking about old stories, but Basically, one time, one of my friends, we were backstage and we had about 30 seconds before we were going on this, and she fell onto one of the set pieces that had spiky sea urchins coming out of it because it was the Little Mermaid, and she cut her hand, and we didn't realize that, but then we had to go on stage. Like, there wasn't anything we could do about it, so we all went on stage, and only later did we realize that she had been dancing that whole time with the blood literally dripping down her arm. And after we had finished, and then the next blackout was, someone had to come on stage with a rag and like mop it up, and it was so bad. Luckily, it wasn't like that bad of an injury. It was just that it was bleeding a lot. And last year when we did Oz, there was this big scene at the end where the witch gets melted and one of her nails fell off, and she didn't realize it until she got off stage. And so we're the next ones to come on stage, my group. Right before we were going on stage, the witch was running around backstage like, oh my god, I lost a nail. Like, it's out there somewhere. I don't want someone to step on it. Like, what are we gonna do? So she's going around telling everyone, just watch out, because there's a nail in like downstage left. Like, there's a nail where I melted. It's somewhere, and I don't know where it is, and don't step on it. So one of the girls ended up finding it and kicking it off while we were on stage. But that's kind of another example of how you just keep dancing. It doesn't stop when you leave the studio. These people go home and they stretch and work out more. Getting home at 4:30 p.m. and then having a show at 7 p.m. after rehearsing for literally hours, I cannot imagine that. And then like getting ready, she says it takes an hour for her to do hair and makeup, just hair and makeup. And then they do another like warm-up class, but a shorter one, probably 30 minutes, and putting on a costume, and then another show. You don't dance professionally for the money. You do it because of your love of dance. So many little girls are like, oh my god, I'm gonna go be a ballerina, I'm gonna go dance, and then they quit after a year, or even just after a few years. You can't just become a ballerina because you're like, oh yeah, I want to be a ballerina, I want to be a professional dancer. It doesn't work like that. You have to put in so much hard work, so much dedication, so much training, so much time. And the reason for it is just that genuine joy that you get from performing in front of an audience and from doing dance. It's just very, very hard and difficult, but it's worth it. You have to, if you want to be a professional ballerina, you have to have the endurance and the strength to be able to do that. Highly recommend going to see New York City Ballet, like Nutcracker or something. Nutcracker is such a tradition for, I think, a lot of dance studios, but I specifically want to talk about New York City Ballet Nutcracker. I think it's really, really good. It's such a classic Christmas heartwarming story that it will always trace roots back to ballet, which I think is really cool. The last thing I want to say before I bring Mr. O'Brien on is that I want to talk about me and my plans with dance. So for me, I definitely plan on continuing dance until I graduate high school. What I don't know is what will happen after that, because I definitely don't see myself pursuing a career in the dance industry just because I don't have the proper training for that, and I also just feel like it's a lot and I don't think it's a realistic goal for me at this point in my life. But I think it's really fun and I would love to continue dancing just for fun. Definitely if I end up coming back here after college, I would love to go back to 171 and be a part of story ballets as an adult, because it's just a part of me that I will never forget, never want to let go of. And I just want to leave with, even though dance is extremely difficult, and especially when talking about professional dance, it's so great, and I wouldn't change anything about it. I definitely think it's such a worthwhile and fulfilling thing to do, and it's one of my favorite things in the whole world, and I love being able to share that joy in performances, like when we're performing at Sparkle, or doing the story ballet, or even the recitals. It's just so much fun, and I love it. I really, truly love it so much, and I cannot imagine what my life would be without it. Now that I've talked about what life is like as a professional dancer, I've brought in Mr. Greg O'Brien to tell us about his real-life experiences in the world of professional dance. What is your style of dance?
The style of dance that I did professionally was modern dance, but it was kind of our own take on modern dance because we incorporated a lot of elements of the Cirque du Soleil type of body weight sharing, and we called it experiments in human architecture.
When did you start dancing? Or how did you become a dancer?
Well, my story is unusual because I was an athlete before I ever, I was around dance because my mom and my sisters were all dancers, but I didn't take any dance classes because I didn't want to be made fun of. And I didn't want to be called names, And so it wasn't until I was old enough to feel confident at college. I took my first dance class for real when I was a senior in high school, which is unusual, very late, but I was an athlete, so I had a lot of the skills. And then I started taking dance classes in college.
When did you decide to pursue dance as a career, and why?
I can remember the day when I went and I talked to my favorite uncle about it. I was actually living with him and working for him that summer, working in a factory, and he asked me what I wanted to do with my life, and I said, well, I really wanted to become a dancer, but I couldn't because I was the first person in my family to go to college. I gave all these reasons why I couldn't do it, and he said, whose life is it anyway? And it made such a huge impact on me that I went back and I actually declared a dance major the next semester after that summer.
How long did you dance professionally?
I danced professionally for about 25 years in my own companies. I did some professional dancing before I started my own company with some dance companies like the Ithaca Ballet. I did some paid work for them. I did some paid work for Norwich Ballet, for the Binghamton Ballet, lots of companies around this part of New York.
What was the biggest challenge you faced during your dance career?
That's a good question. I think that everybody has their own journey. My particular journey, because I was coming at it late and I didn't have the flexibility that a lot of other people did, I really wanted to be able to make it into other dance companies if I wanted to, but I never had quite the level of flexibility that I would have needed, and I didn't have the training. I couldn't pick up steps as fast. I could get them, but if I went to an audition for a dance company, I wouldn't get the combinations fast enough in order to be able to make myself look good. It would take me too long.
Why do you love dance?
That's the kind of question that dancers know the answers, that you don't really know why. It's just something in your blood. And I knew I loved dance from the time I was in second grade because I went to a Catholic school, and once a week, one of the other teachers from would come in. Her name was Mrs. McDonald, and she would march all of us second graders down to the gymnasium, and we would do the Irish jig. The boys would line up from the girls, and she'd blow a whistle, and the boys would have to scramble to pick their dance partner for that day. And I loved it. I had so much fun learning to do the Irish jig in second grade.
What was daily life like as a professional dancer?
Well, it was really varied because when we were working on new material, I would spend 12, 14 hours in a studio, leaving only to go to the bathroom and to have food. That was it. We were really obsessive, and it's a lot of work to create new material. And we were doing new shows on a regular basis. We wanted to make a lot of new material. And then once we began touring, it was a very different experience because then you want to rest all day and really give all of your energy for that hour and a half to 2 hours that you're on stage, because it was a small company. There was only 3 of us, so we really were on stage the entire hour and a half to 2 hours. And so that was like a completely different experience.
What kinds of shows were you a part of?
Well, our company was called the Secondhand Dance Company, and later it was called Galumpha. And we created our own show, but we got asked to do many of these dances on television and in festivals, and we went to schools. We did a lot of comedy festivals, which is very unusual for a dance company because a lot of our dances had humor in them. So we got to do a big comedy festival in Canada where I got to spend a weekend hanging out with Weird Al Yankovic. And we got to do The Late Show with David Letterman and a couple of other really big TV events. But mostly what we did was we toured from colleges and universities and festivals doing dance performances in like traditional theaters.
Do you have any favorite memories from that time?
Yeah, I've got so many because we got to travel around a lot. But so, for example, when once we were in Montreal and we were doing this comedy festival up there, and we were walking around, we were still together outside after the show, and this person came up to us and said, "Hey, would you be willing to do a minute of one of your dances that you did for our new TV program? It's called MTV." And so it was the first year MTV, maybe the second year that MTV was on. And so we did a minute's worth of material, and that's in Montreal, in the city of Montreal. And while we were doing it, somebody came by and stopped and saw us, and based on that 1 minute of dance, said, "I run a festival in the Netherlands, and I wonder if you're available this next summer, and it's 10 days, and we'll fly you out there, and we'll pay you." And we were like, holy cow, we showed up to do one dance at a show, and the next thing we knew, we had a tour of Europe just from doing 1 minute of dance on the street. It was really one of those moments where you realize that we are really lucky people.
Professional dancer?
Oh, sure. I know that so much of what I experienced was that we were lucky. We were in the right place at the right time, but we put ourselves in a position that luck could happen. We had worked really hard to create dances that we loved. We tried to make it so that we weren't making dances because we thought people would like them. We were making dances because we liked them. When we saw them, we enjoyed them. And that turned out to be a winning kind of approach because other people saw them and they also had a really good time, and they would tell their friends. And so our audiences grew really organically without us having to do a whole lot of marketing, you know. So I think that it's really about pursuing your passions, but being willing to put in the hours, the weeks, the years of training and honing your craft.
Why did you stop dancing professionally?
Age. I stopped dancing because I was getting old. I had a family, and I was spending 6, sometimes 8 months of the year on the road, and it's really hard to have children and have them grow up and not be able to be there for them. Plus, my body was beginning to show signs of deterioration because the kind of work we did, that experiments in human architecture, was really hard on our physical bodies. There were dances where I would routinely carry 300 pounds of weight on my skeletal frame because of the nature of the work that we were doing. It happened, a lot. So, it really began to take its toll on me physically.
Do you have anything else you'd like to share about your dance journey?
I have a lot of really fun stories, and I'll share one with you. I remember that we were going to be performing at Carnegie Hall for the first time, and we were still not making any money, and I hitchhiked to New York City to get to Carnegie Hall. But it was also going to be the first time that my mom, she was the choreographer in the family, she's the one who got me interested in dance, and she was there, and I was more nervous with my mom being in the audience for the first time than when the New York Times was there to review us. And one thing I'll share, this is my last bit here from my mom, is when I asked her, because this was all modern dance, and when I really began to study dance, she said to me, "Greg, if you're really serious about dance, you better take some ballet classes," because I was only taking modern dance. And I said, "But Mom, you don't do ballet, you only do modern dance." And she said, "You have to learn the rules before you can play them." And that was her advice to me, and it was good advice.
Thank you so much for talking with us. It was really great to have you.
It was great talking with you too. Good luck with your dance career.
On today's episode of the Dance Podcast, I talked all about what it is like to be a professional dancer. I also had Mr. O'Brien come on and tell us all about his dance career. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Dance Podcast.